Everybody, you probably noticed from the many posts that we already have that we had snow in DC. So today is a very cold day, and but it's nice to be here with you. Let me start very quickly. As Sheila said, this presentation hopefully would last for about 20 minutes, 25 maximum. And the idea is really to know what you think, to discuss with you, and I hope this could be beneficial to both of us. So let me start. I have to use this, I guess. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Let me start presenting what is the project we are talking about this morning. We called it Learning from Megadisaster. And of course, the mega disaster that we are referring to is the tragic event that happened in Japan on March 11, 2011. What happened, as everybody knows, was an incredible series of events, from an earthquake to a tsunami to a series of incredible impacts that followed. Together with the government of Japan, the World Bank started this project right after the disaster. And the idea was to really try to understand what happened, try to understand what worked, what didn't work, try to collect all the information that were already available, many actually, a lot of very prestigious research institutes, academic, and other organizations in Japan were very actively working in understanding what happened, what didn't work, etc., and in trying to understand how to cope with the disaster, what to do after a few months. So we were able to collect all the information that were already in the ground to produce some more when necessary. And also we were able to learn as much as possible. We learned a lot of lessons. We put all these lessons into something that we called knowledge notes. What are these knowledge notes? The knowledge notes are very short document, very practical. Usually they are 5 to 10 pages. They are not academic. They are really sharp, and they discuss about specific measures. They discuss about specific tools. They try to understand what worked, what didn't work in the application, in the implementation of those tools and measures, and they derive recommendations. Recommendations that are have been designed in particular for developing countries, for the clients of the bank. The government of Japan has been very active in helping the bank and all the authors and all the people and partners that worked with us in really understanding what happened, and also in what we call the second phase of this project, which is focusing on dissemination and capacity building. So let me summarize. The overall Learning from Mega Disaster project is focusing on collecting, analyzing information, data, and evaluation that have been done by academic institutions, NGOs, government agencies, even the private sector, with one main objective, which is to share the cutting-edge Japan's knowledge on disaster risk management and post-disaster reconstruction. The idea is to share all this knowledge, all this information, all the lessons learned, all the recommendations, not just with anybody, but in particular with vulnerable countries and vulnerable developing countries. The project is, as I just said, divided in two phases. The first phase was the production of the knowledge notes, and we have done. I'm lucky. Yeah, finally that was done. It was a big process. We learned a lot. Amazing process, but it was also very exhausting. The second phase just started, and it is focusing, as I said, on the dissemination and capacity building phase. Dissemination means talking about this activity, presenting the knowledge notes. We've even developed what we call a community of practice, where we are sharing with a lot of incredible experts and practitioners around the world all the information. They are posting, they are really active. It's an amazing experience. And we are also focusing on some pilot capacity building programs. We are targeting few countries all over the world among our clients, and we are trying to help them understanding what to do with all this knowledge, how to use what we learned from the Japan experience, and how to put it in practice, to adapt it to their needs. Let me go on with starting with a summary of what we learned. So you can find all this information on the web. All these knowledge notes are downloadable from the WBI site. But still, let me take this opportunity to share with you the main findings and the lessons that we learned. So I will start presenting the knowledge notes and the key messages that we could put into them. And then I will focus on the second phase of the project. So here you have, I hope you can see this slide, it's quite narrow, a summary of what we found in the process of developing the knowledge notes. First, we saw that this event was absolutely exceptional. It's an obvious, I know, but we were able to point out few issues that were absolutely good for us to really try to understand why certain measures were not able to work, where certain measures and certain practice that used to be cutting edge and very advanced unfortunately failed. So that was a point, a starting point that we had to make at the very beginning. The second part is how the Japan DRM system coped with all that, all this incredible disaster that happened. And unfortunately, we had to admit that few things didn't work as well as expected. And so we are going to focus also on those. So, as I said, first of all, Japan had not foreseen an event like this. It was, as you probably all know, a high-impact event with a low probability of occurrence, and it was a high complex phenomenon. The effect of this phenomenon, the effect of this disaster, unfortunately also cascaded into many sensitive facilities. Everybody knows about the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. Of course, that was the main thing in the news. But unfortunately, there were other sensitive plants like oil, gas, like electrical company and others that faced the effect and impacts of those terrible events. Also, direct damage to major Japanese industries were of course done, but those were even much bigger and, as we said, rocketed through supply chain around the world. We are in a very connected world. Supply chain is so close in many other places that unfortunately the effect of this event were not limited to the area where it actually happened. And the supply chain effect really increased in incredible level, the effect, the terrible effect of this event. If you can see this table, I'm not sure, but we try to summarize using official data from several ministries in Japan and from the government of Japan, which were the main figures that, in a sense, summarize the event. So first of all, it was a tragedy, as you all know. I mean, there were more than 17,000 people dead, many missing people, and unfortunately the casualties in all have been quantified at about 20,000. There were a lot of damages to structures, to building, collapsing, some building completely collapsed, other have been just damaged, but the level of the numbers, the figures of buildings that have been damaged is extremely high. The estimation of the total economic damage is about 210 US billion, which is extremely high, and it made this event the most expensive, the most costly throughout the world. So, as we said, it was a very terrible event, but luckily Japan has a very advanced disaster risk management system that was already in place. They have been coping with disasters of any kind I think it's about 2,000 years, maybe more, that they have an history of coping with natural disasters. And actually, these prove its worth. There have been several institutions and organizations that try to estimate what type of damages, what level of damages an event like that happened somewhere else would have provoked. Well, we don't want to know those numbers because it could have been incredibly high. But the loss of life and property could definitely be far greater if Japan's policies and practice have been less effective. So this is definitely one of the main messages that we brought with us and that I really want to share with you today. So let me focus now on the main strengths of the disaster risk management system in Japan. Later we will present also what didn't work that well, or as we said, what worked less well. So what is that during this analysis we really understand that worked very well? First of all, first point, investments in structural measures. Such as reinforced buildings, such as seawalls, such as buildings that are, in a sense, much more prepared to sustain earthquakes and to sustain tsunami where possible, definitely proved they were worth. Also, investment on cutting-edge risk assessments. That was definitely extremely important, as well as early warning system and a very broad system of mapping hazards and of communicating and informing a pretty extensive amount of people about those hazard maps. One point that we found was extremely important in this case was also what we call the culture of preparedness, where training, evacuation drills are systematically practiced. And they are practiced not only at national level, they are practiced at local level, they are practiced at community levels, they are practiced in school, in workplaces, etc. So it's a practice that is really well established. Another point that we found was very, very important was the quick reaction the government of Japan showed in terms of disbursement of money. And this is, of course, well connected to their fiscal and financial measures, and of course also to very interesting insurance policies that are very well established and in place. Also, other point extremely important. We learned that what we call stakeholder involvement, where stakeholders are at the national level, part of the national government, are part of the local government, are inside the communities, are among NGOs, are in the private sectors. All those stakeholders have been involved and also have been involved previously. So basically all of them were able to understand what is the role they could play, what is they could do to help in case of an emergency, to be prepared, so invest in preventive measures, and also what to do when the time of recovery and rebuilding comes. Another point that was extremely interesting to us was the type of legislation and regulation that has been designed and also, extremely important, has been enforced in the years. We learned that Japan is not only good at designing laws and enforce them, but is also very good at revisiting them. When a major event happened, for example, 1995, a big earthquake in Kobe, they immediately took advantage of what happened and learned unfortunately the hard way, that some of the, for example, building codes that they prepared were not good enough. They were not enough to sustain the level of an earthquake, the level of earthquake that actually happened in Kobe in 1995. So they changed the building code. They redesigned the building code, learning from the experience, the tragic experience that they lived. So the fact that they are learning, they are changing the regulation, they are changing the legislation where possible, and they are enforcing it very, I mean, trying their best to make it happen, is another point that was extremely important even in this case. I mean, the last point is kind of obvious, but of course, if you have resources enough and if you can access sophisticated instrument to underpin planning and assessment of operation, of course that will help a lot. And in Japan we saw that all these cutting edge resources, all these very highly technology instruments were already there. They have been implemented, and they gave a lot of good results. Let me get to the point where we try to discuss what worked less well. First of all, we learned that spreading a better understanding of the nature and limitation of risk assessment, it's extremely important. Why I'm saying that? Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that risk assessments are useless. No, I will never say that. I'm not saying that risk assessment are not to be taken in consideration seriously, not at all. What I'm saying is that risk assessment are tentative. They are trying to assess the type of risks. They are trying to assess the type of event that can happen and the type of impact. So it is very important to understand that there are limitations, that there are things that may have not taken into account to the extent needed. And this unfortunately happened on March 11. They realized that even if they had very good hazard maps, even if they had extremely sophisticated risk assessment already in place, they couldn't take into account an event like that. So risk assessment was unfortunately failing. So it's extremely important to understand that risk assessment can be not as perfect as we would like them to be. And to communicate these to local authorities and, if possible, to the population at large would be actually extremely helpful. Another point that I would like to stress here is about coordination. Again, coordination when there is an event like that, coordination of all the people in the ground, coordination of the people that are sending funds, sending money, that are donating whatever they can. It's not an easy task. But again, here, even if Japan is very well organized in many means, unfortunately, coordination mechanisms on the ground were somehow failing. We understood that it is absolutely important if those coordination mechanisms are agreed previously. So basically, if it is possible to have some agreements and some coordination agreements already in place before such an event happened. Another point that is extremely important, and we thought it needed more work, is about vulnerable groups. We are referring here to women, to children, and to the elderly in particular. We found out that those groups were not protected enough, and also not just protected, probably they should have been engaged more from the very beginning, so that some issues that we found, especially for women and the elderly, could have been avoided, because having them already among the group of people that are identifying how to build a shelter, that are identifying what to provide the people in the shelter with, it would have been extremely useful, and it would have avoided a lot of stress, especially to women and the elderly. So let me get then to another point that we think is extremely important. Doing this analysis over the past 1 year and a half, we were able to understand the strengths and the weaknesses that we found, in Japan's response to the Great East Japan earthquake and tsunami. Out of those important lessons that we learned, we were able to extract a set of key messages that we think are summarizing the main issues and that can be recommended to countries, cities, and communities all over the world that are vulnerable to disasters. So the overall idea, again, with the government of Japan is to, in a sense, make the best use possible of this tragedy. So instead that just recovery in Japan, use all the lessons and spread them as much as possible and try to extract key messages that are adaptable, transferable, even in other countries. And this is actually what we try to do. So let me get to the key messages that we extract from the lessons you just saw we learned. First of all, the first one is the fact that extreme disasters underscore the need for an holistic approach. What we are trying to say here is that there is not one sector that even the most sophisticated one, that can deal with an event like that. There is the need to have interaction and integration among sectors, among government, NGOs, communities, to really understand how to cope with an event like that. And Japan actually is now placing heavier emphasis on understanding the complexity of risks and is trying to design systems that are able to, that's how they say it, fail gracefully. So to include all, the best of the technology possible, the best of infrastructure possible, but being aware that even though there are limits to what it can be done structurally. So it is extremely important to have other measures at the same time, other sectors working at the same time, to guarantee to the extent possible that the best proactive approach is in place. The second point and the second key message that I would like to share is about preventive investment. These events actually show that they are worth it. But unfortunately, we had to add a but. So we are saying that preventive investment pay, but we need to be prepared for the unexpected. This means that, for example, in Japan, they had the highest level of seawalls. So out of 300 kilometers of seawalls, unfortunately, 190 collapsed. So even if they were the best seawalls you can think about, they still collapse. So the point is that it is extremely important to not just only focus on structural measures, of course they are needed, but this kind of paradigm shift that the Japanese are very much into right now can help addressing disasters that are unpredictable and are very high impact and not expected. So Japan is actually moving into this shift, trying to complement structural and non-structural measures to assure a better way to cope and be prepared for such type of events. Third key message is about the fact that DRM is not just a national or local government issue. It is really everyone's business. One colleague of mine really doesn't like the fact that we say DRM is everyone's business, because he thinks that if it is everyone's business, so no one will do anything. But believe me, what we are trying to say here is that there is a role, there are responsibilities for every single person in the disaster risk management system. So from national to local governments, from communities to NGOs to the private sectors, everybody should have a role and should have a responsibility and should be trained and get prepared to actually do what they are expected to. Other key messages. Another one that I think is important is that it's absolutely needed to assess risks, but not only, also to communicate them clearly, to communicate them to the extent possible to as many people as possible, because that will help those people make timely decisions and protect themselves. Another key message that we learned is about hazard maps. I was even trying to say that before. I mean, hazard maps, even if extremely important, even if absolutely mandatory, I would say, can give the public a false sense of safety sometimes if they're not properly communicated. So an extra effort in understanding how to properly communicate those, saying that those are risk assessment, those are prediction and forecast, so they are not perfectly a representation of the reality. It's absolutely important to do. I mean, we learned this the hard way in Japan. I mean, the 2011 tsunami was not predicted at all. I mean, it was much greater than expected and much greater than indicated in the maps. So the people that actually followed the maps word by word could have been caught in places that were not safe enough. So it was good if people were actually following the map, but also adding some more information that they learned somehow from the radio, from other early warning system, talking to people, etc. So if they were able to add up different concepts, to add up different information, they were certainly most likely getting into a safer place. Third point is highly connected to the one before. I mean, better management of information and communication is absolutely crucial in emergency and recovery of operation. Here, let me give you a couple of more information about this last point. We found out that in the information and communication issue, in a broader sense, in the Tohoku area, what happened is that we saw two main problems. The first one was the lack of real-time information on the condition, for example, and of course coordination among parties was not easy. The second one was the loss of critical public records, vital to reconstruction. For example, in some cities, entire municipalities' office were completely gone, and the building collapsed. And let's suppose that you have your health record inside those buildings; they're gone. And if you don't have good backups, if you don't have safe places where you store all those information, they're gone. And it's very hard to get back to all of those. In terms of lack of information, we saw a great use of social media, great use of any type of communication means, from the radio to Facebook to you name it. The problem with communication was that we found that those risk communication were pretty well done in terms of, for example, evacuation. So people actually knew where to go, how to do it, also where temporary shelters were. They knew. They knew how to get there, what to bring with them, which is basically nothing. And also where food distribution would have happened, how to get there, how to get what you need, etc. All those were fairly handed. Unfortunately, some confusion about the scope and the extent of the nuclear disaster led to public dissatisfaction. And here I'm quoting from an official document from the Cabinet Office. So basically, there were some cases where information and communication, the scope of it, the extent of it, were not perfectly handled, and these, of course, led to dissatisfaction and big challenges, let's say additional challenges. Last part of key messages, the last 3 points. One is about coordination mechanism. We referred to that a little bit, and we understood that if a country is able to understand what to do, which are the organization to alert, who to do what, which are the role, the responsibility, and these has been defined in advance and somehow, if possible, tested in normal times, chances are that coordination will work better. Vulnerable groups, we refer to that already. We need not just to protect them, but to really engage them from the very beginning. So it is more likely that the emergency, especially in the emergency situation, they don't feel abandoned. Last point, which is in a sense, I believe, is summarizing them all, is that the fact that Japan actually learned from the past disaster, and they really learned from those, is extremely important. Japan changed the way they are doing disaster risk management, the way they are implementing the measures, the type of measures that they are implementing. They are shifting from total infrastructure to infrastructure and non-structural measure at the same time. So there is a lot of learning, and they are demonstrating that they are using this learning to the point that they are changing their attitude, they are changing their behavior, they are changing their regulation. And this is, I think, it's an important message that I would like to share with you. So let's get to the very last point. So we have all these messages, we have all this information, we have a lot of measures, and everything is on the web, downloadable, etc. So everything is there, it's open, you can access it. But is this going to be enough to get everybody in the world prepared? Of course not. I don't think that there is a way to actually get everybody prepared. But still, we could do a little bit more. So it was it was a wonderful experience to learn from the Japanese government, to learn from the Japanese communities, from the people, from the private sector. And we are still learning. We are actually right now developing a 7th cluster. I don't know if I said that, but all these knowledge nodes have been clustered into thematic areas. So there are 6 right now. Structural measures, non-structural, emergency, risk, many. I mean, you can find all of them on the web. We are now developing a final cluster, which is about recovery and reconstruction. And the, let's say, documentation phase will be ending soon. But we don't think that to document was the only objective, the only aim of this activity. Actually, we would like to use those lessons. We would like to use those information, those measures to help other countries. So the idea is to have what we call capacity development program. We are doing some pilot in some countries. We selected countries like Indonesia, Uganda, Kenya, Sri Lanka, the Philippines, Tanzania, and also Armenia. And we are ready to work with the clients, and they will pick the measures and the activities they are very interested from the many knowledge nodes, the many measures that we are documenting. And they will ask the government of Japan, the bank, any of our partners to actually define a tailored capacity building for them that is going to propose to focus on the measures and on their interests that they have, and it's going to really be tailored to their needs. So I'm very happy that we are in this second phase, and I think it will be extremely useful for all of us. We are going to learn a lot. There are going to be a lot of exchanges from these different countries, and the Japanese are also very excited because they know that they will learn a lot from the countries we are going to work with. So here it is. I hope you had a chance to learn a little bit about what we did in the past 1.5 years. I will be happy to come again in a few months